focus. All right, click the links for Odyssey, BitChute, and the Gab, the Telegram, or Sport Channel unsubscribe, or become a member of this channel. The various other links to do that kind of stuff. So I don't do comics anymore, not because nobody watched them, because it's not such a big deal, but it's a select audience. It's a small select audience. You can tell by the watch times like what people are into. It's like you might get less clicks on a video, but the people who watch the whole thing kind of thing. But because it was all, the punchline was all the same. It's just when I say you can tell the story from the cover, you can look at the cover and you can pick it up, look at the cover, and put it down again. The story's already told. And I go, how you say that? It sounds so istophobic when you say that. Yeah. Except it's not, because it's almost every time you pick up a comic. So Comicsgate got started years ago. Mr. Myers, Diversity in Comics, was reviewing comics, and it was a lot of fun to listen to him review this stuff. And we're watching these comics and thinking, this is insane. This can't be. It can't be as bad as he's making it out to be, showing these clips of comics. And then you can go online and find the stuff, obviously. And you look at it, you're like, Myers was dialing it back. He was pulling his punches. He was showing you and trying to get the story out there. But if anything, he was underselling how bad they were, because it was too ridiculous. And the thing is, if you keep looking at this stuff over and over again, there's only so much you can say about it before you kind of avoid these elephants in the room, which I wasn't doing when I was doing that stuff. And I was getting strikes on the channel. It's like eventually the channel is just going to get kicked if you went down that pathway. It's like, all right. So anyway, but I just randomly, like, I can still keep tabs on comics. I look up like the High Republic. I think those have concluded, and Captain Marvel, because I've been noted. It's fun to watch the progress of these comics. Captain Marvel went from just ridiculous to started to actually improve, and then kind of went back to ridiculousness again in the last few issues. But it's like on issue 38, which is for modern SJW comics, is actually, that's pretty, 3 years. That's something to be respected. So when you look at this comic and you see the cover, how can you tell that the story is told in the cover? Because when you look at the story, if you see, I can tell you who the protagonist and the antagonist are, or at least a very high probability. Because if you've read how many thousands of comics, you know the story, especially modern or SJW comics. So I actually, of course, the girl in the right corner with the her natural hair, which is, they do that in comics all the time. They give chicks natural hair. These walks chicks their natural hair, and in the real world, that's not what they're doing. But in comics, they don't want to, like, I don't know, Europeanize these people. So these. What do you mean these people? I'm trying to avoid certain words for the algorithm. So they give them their natural hair, and they're always like funky, fresh, 90s styles natural hair. And don't get me wrong, I'm team natural hair. Like, why pay for anything if you don't have to? So you notice that in comics, like, all the time. In fact, you notice quite a few things in comics, and like, oh, aren't those tried, hackneyed, and overused? Yeah. So doesn't that make a story kind of predictable? Yes. And doesn't that thus make a story boring? Yes, it does. So how does that affect sales? Oh, well, that's a good question. That's a very good question. Yeah, they're dog shit. And people in the comments of this on the I forget the online forum that I paid for this. I definitely paid for this comic. They're talking about, like, oh, this comic looks like it has legs. I'm thinking, like, dude, you're just not paying attention to comics if you think this comic has legs. And I would love to be a fly on the wall of the writers and editors when they sit down and they talk about this story. This is a Harry Potter ripoff, which in itself is a ripoff of hundreds of years of fantasy writing. It doesn't mean it's bad, and it doesn't mean when you sit down together you're like, yeah, we're going to do this Harry Potter ripoff where it's going to be a hidden world story. And here the hidden world is obviously the Fantastic Beasts type of world where it's a hospital. They treat these fantastic creatures, which is fine. Like, doing ripoffs, like everything. Even Lord of the Rings was borrowing stuff openly from earlier fantasy. I think Shadowfax, he explained he borrowed that from an earlier fantasy story, which had a lot of influence on him. So there's no problem with that. That's how stories progress. So they go to this hospital. It's it's like they're at the railway station in Harry Potter, and it's like 9 3/4, and they pass through it. It's a similar kind of thing. It's a wall that's not there, or like they do that with Wakanda. It's the same kind of thing. So that's fine. But you think it's got legs? You got to go, well, I'm looking at the cover, and I'm just going to guess that the protagonist is this girl. Which is case I was right, obviously, because, it's like 99% correlation. And I'm guessing the antagonist is someone on the left, and it's not going to be this girl, obviously, because she has the sides of her head shaved, and she's got a toothpick in her mouth. Though she's an EMT driver, she's driving a car with a toothpick, which is like the number one choking hazard. So EMTs wouldn't drive with toothpicks. EMTs probably wouldn't even be using toothpicks because it's very, very dangerous. If you get in a car with the EMT, it's like the first thing they do is put on the seatbelt. They do not mess around. So I can tell you the antagonist, I assumed it would be blonde-haired, blue-eyed lady with a little bit of a Karen haircut. I was wrong. It's this other light hair, fair-skinned guy who's this is a little tricky because his name is like Luis Cervantes or something, so he's Spanish, and he uses a couple of Spanish phrases. So, Spanish, Eastern Europeans, Southern Mediterranean people is a little tricky for SGWs to try to categorize them. But so the story's already told. If I know the protagonist and the antagonist, just looking at the cover, it's only a question of, well, how are they going to tell the story? It's like, God, what was that old Italian storytelling structure that even that British band mentioned it, Faramus, you do the Fandango. I think those were three characters in this old Italian storytelling structure that they just took these characters and they told them in different stories. It's like the story is kind of already told. Anyway, so you start looking through the anatomy of an SJW story. Everything is just kind of milquetoast. You look at this chick, and the art is, it is what it is. It's budget art. That's fine. As long as the story is fine, it doesn't matter. But you start looking at this chick and think like, oh, she's going to be the protagonist. And this guy said, this story's got legs. So it's a WOX. That stands for woman of color, chick. No, to be blunt, to be brutally blunt, like you're sitting in the writer's room and say, yeah, that's not a story that, the statistics, the probability of that is very low of that story having legs. And like you want to see an uncomfortable moment with sitting around a bunch of SJWs and like just openly, honestly, I say yeah. So this is the punchline of the story is she has to put the other guy in his place because he has less ink, he has less dark ink on the page, and she has more dark ink. That's literally how the mathematical equation goes. That tells you the story right there, just how much ink is on the page. So if you're sitting around the writer's room, you go, yeah, I hear a story. You're doing a Harry Potter ripoff, and you get the protagonist is a WOX, and the antagonist he's fair, but you don't really. What is a Spanish guy, right? Sorry, John Delarose, you're just not quite there. So you go, okay, but why don't we switch this up to kind of meet the market demands? And the market demands are like, listen, you want to make her female fine, make her a hot blonde chick, and then you want Pox in the story, make the doctor the Spanish guy, make him a black guy, and then if the punchline at the end of the story is that the hot blonde chick can put the Pox doctor in his place. And you're sitting around with the editors and writers, whoever, and they're like looking at you like, sir, are you out of your fucking mind? That's just how simple it is. So you go, oh yeah, but that's different. Like the story is already told with these cliche characters. Like this has been told. If you scroll through the past 5 years of comics, like literally scroll through 200 comic books, this story, how they portray oh, look who's helpful and beneficial. It's like, oh, do you have a problem with them? No. I'm saying in terms of storytelling and marketability, if you're using the same story, if you're putting characters in the same position every single time, nobody's going to buy your story because the story is already told on the front cover. Who's helpful and who's kind and who's generous and who needs assistance. It's that kind of storytelling that makes for a very boring story. How many times do you need to see this in a story? The shaved head, the hips looking cool chick, how many times do you need to see that in the story? It kind of reminds me of that Ghostbuster chick. Before you realize, like, oh, it's kind of been done to death. The helpful people helping the help. She turns out to be some kind of supernatural creature. So the SGW with the side of her head shaved, the Pox and the WOX helping the blonde-haired supernatural creature. Get out of there. You've seen this story 1,000 times, and it turns out they introduced the antagonist, who's, fair, very fair, but Spanish, which is a little bit of it's tricky for SJWs. He's a little bit cocky. He's not horrible, but he's a little bit cocky. So of course, like I said, when you look at the cover, the story's already told. So they're introducing him. He's a hotshot doctor, fair enough. A lot of doctors are kind of driven type A personalities. It's an emergent situation. But you know he's gonna start to be put in his place. And she's going to be the one to put him in his place, because that's how stories are told every single time. And if you brought this up to that room of SJWs, immediate ad hominem, or if they're honest, they'd be like, yeah, but what else are we going to do? What else do you expect us to do? Like if you swap out the characters, and oh look, he's nervous and uncomfortable. He's an ER doc, and he's stuttering and nervous because he has to perform ER stuff, and he's an ER doc. It's like that scene in Black Panther where they have to put other characters down to elevate their own characters. Well, that's poor storytelling. You don't have to do that. So at the punchline at the end of the story is she's a doctor. She's a doctor all along. She left for some reason. Something that stupid having to do with the story. And now they're doctors together. And now for some reason he's under her, and she has to put him in his place a little bit. Just a little subtle. It's not over the top. And he is Spanish, which confuses everything. And there's, thank gosh, this shaved head girl is back. I mean, no toothpick this time. Just a little. And you go, listen, if you did that, and of course you're big fro in a hospital. I'm sure that's gonna happen. If you did this stuff, you got to spread it around. You can do this every once in a while, fine. But it's every story. That's modern comics, and it's not just comics, which I don't think anyone's reading modern comics now, unless you're some bizarre SJW who is going online and borrowing the comics without remuneration, which is what a lot of people are doing. Nobody, like, how many issues is this thing selling from Dark Knight? I don't know what they open up at anymore, and I don't think that website keeps track of them anymore, because since things kind of went digital. But you like, this does not look like a $high comic. It's like the whole comic industry is kind of openly admitting, like, oh, this is just like, this is propaganda. There's no storytelling to be had here. Anyway, so this cover, and then go scroll through any comic on the shelf or digital, and you see this. Dark Knight is especially SJW, and so is Image. But you know what I'm saying with this. Like, I just picked this up. I scrolled through like 3 Captain or Ms. Marvel, the High Republic, to see if there's new issues. I think they're all concluded. And then this came up on the website that I paid for. And as soon as I looked at the cover, I'm like, oh yeah, this. And then I went through the cover and I was right. And so, it's weird how I'm right, like every single time, with these stories being told. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next episode.